Hey everyone, we've got another episode of the Phantom Podcast. As you guys all know, my name is Nabil Ahmed. I am the co founder and CEO of Phantom Food. A little bit about Phantom Food. We are revolutionizing or evolving the way that private dining is experienced by connecting chefs, mixologists, and venues together to our members. But once we realized when we started talking to a lot of chefs and operators was their stories are amazing, and hence why we created the Phantom Podcast. So today we have the honor of sitting in the presence of Gemma. And before I ruin any kind of introduction that justifies everything that she's experienced or created or learned, I'll kind of kick it off to her to kind of give us a walkthrough. So Gemma, thank you for joining us, and why don't you give us a quick intro?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Gemma Matsuyama. I am a pastry person here in Los Angeles. I grew up in New Jersey in a food loving family. My mom is Italian and my dad is Japanese. And I have an older sister, and we just loved food all the time, growing up. So I found myself just tinkering in the kitchen after my parents and my sister was done cooking. And I made a batch of cream puffs when I was like 14, and my dad ate them all and made me really happy. So that really kicked off how I started cooking and baking for my loved ones. And I just felt like the power of creating something from scratch and make someone else happy to be a very powerful magic in our hands. So that's what kept me going, and I'm still doing it like 16, 17 years later now. So yeah, thank you for having me.
No, it's cool, and I think what's really interesting is kind of you said you're Italian and Japanese, right?
Yeah.
How has that influenced the way that you've approached, creating food, and do you actually kind of take different flavors from different pieces of your culture to push that through?
I think now that I'm in my 30s, I am working in a few Japanese restaurants the past few years. I'm more comfortable incorporating like the Japanese flavors into my food. But to be honest, I was pretty intimidated by Japanese cuisine since I was younger. Like there were a lot of flavor profiles that I wasn't really in love with. I loved pizza and pasta from day one, but
Mhm.
Japanese food was something I had to grow to love. And now that I'm older, I actually crave it more. I feel good when eating it. In contrast, when I eat a lot of dairy and pasta, I tend to just feel more sleepy and
Yeah.
la
Hey,
dolce vita, like I want to
I'll
relax.
that's the story of my life, right? I think I love pasta, pizza. I think we me and my wife we talk about if there's only one thing you can eat in the for the rest of your life in the world, what would it be?
Mhm.
And we always pick bread, right? That's like our food, our go-to.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about what you said is like, those flavor profiles that you kind of had to get used to in Japanese food. What are those
Mhm.
profiles that you were kind of having difficulty getting attracted to in the beginning?
Yeah, so like one of them was like daikon radish. I just like it's simmered in a traditional Japanese dish and like some sake mirin, and it has this like funky smell, and I was always really not really a fan of that when I was younger, and my family would always try to make me eat it, and I would, and I'd be like really upset. But now, like later on, I had it fresh in a salad, and I was like, oh my god, daikon is so good, fresh in a salad. You take out some of the spicy funkiness, like soaking it in water first, and then it's like this crunchy sweet thing, but it not too sweet, so it's perfect for a salad. So like there's ways that I learned that ingredients can be more palatable to maybe like my palate, that I'm a little bit more westernized here growing up in the States. um, yeah, so as I grew older, I learned to love a lot of the Japanese ingredients and techniques and flavor profiles. But to be honest, yeah, I was just like very into the Italian food my whole adulthood.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean childhood.
And then
Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
when did you and so that what's interesting about that is like, did you kind of feel yourself get a little more into that culture recently, or has it just been, it kind of was a click over once you turned a certain age, or maybe it's
Um,
when you moved. I don't know.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, I moved to LA almost 7 years ago, maybe eight. My friends that I worked in New York, uh, some of them were from here in LA, and I just really wanted to soak up the sunshine and escape the cold. So
Hmm.
I came out here. We opened up a food truck, and we were like in our 20s, and that was such a great experience. But we were all in our 20s, me and my business partners, and some of my business partners decided to go back to college. So we folded the business, sold the food truck again, and I found myself at my parents' house again, like literally crying. um, don't know what to do with my next step because I was trying to establish myself as a pastry chef, but also
Hmm.
wanted to explore more of my culture. My sister moved to Japan, and had a child, so I was frequently visiting her as much as I can, like once a year, and I really was like enamored by the Japanese food scene. So I was torn between training in Japan or staying in the States longer. That's when I received a text message from Chef Niki of and Naka because I met her through my food truck journey, and she had one of my cakes, and she was like, "Hey, I need a pastry chef. Are you available?" And I was like, "Oh my god, the universe has sent me like an opportunity that I used to dream about in my, like bedroom in high school of like wanting to work in a small, intimate Japanese place where we respected seasonality and told a story and stuff like that." So I jumped on that opportunity. I was planning, like, I had a vacation to visit my sister right when I got the job. So I had a whole month to spend in Japan before I took on the Naka project. So I was able to like brainstorm some ideas, be inspired again by the scenery, by the flavor profiles. So I came back to LA, recharged, and it was a really good experience. I learned a lot about Japanese food, LA, like food, and more importantly about myself. I was like, this is the happy place where I'm crossing, like where I get to respect both
Yeah.
of my cultures and my love for American cuisine too. So
Hmm.
yeah, it was a
And
really cool
and
experience.
so when you made that jump into working at a restaurant, so number one, hit the food truck scene, started a business of your own
Mm-hmm.
straight away because you know where your passion is and where you lie, and I think that is really cool. Number one, and kudos to you. Not many people, have the guts to kind of do something like that. And then number three, you're like, okay, I'm analyzing where I'm gonna go and where I'm gonna figure things out, and it was the sign from nature saying, "Hey, welcome to this different opportunity," and pushed it forward. Tell me more about kind of getting
Mm-hmm.
yourself into that new project, and you know how is it very different from your food truck? How is it different to everything else that you've kind of experienced beforehand?
Hmm. I mean, it was a whole healing process, to be honest. The food truck every day was like a different location and different group of people running your own business and doing the numbers and logistics of working on a food truck was just like every day was like a movie of with like drama. Your food truck generator didn't want to work today, and we're like on the highway coming back from Coachella and our tires pop. We're like,
Oh
just like there were
no.
like so many interesting stories that I have from that experience where it was more of a casual setting food wise. I wanted my guests of the food truck when they had my desserts to have like an elevated like flavor profile or like something you would find at a bakery but on a food truck setting. So I think I spent a lot of energy trying to like provide something special in a surprising place where you wouldn't expect it.
Hmm.
And I was also challenging myself. It was a good platform for me to like experiment a lot. And then going back into fine dining and having full control of the menu as like being the head of the pastry program and the only one, but like still, it was really interesting going to the farmers market and trying to incorporate Japanese pastry techniques into the ingredients we have here, and also the last bite of a tasting menu when customers are full to be like
Hmm.
more mindful. So
Yeah.
it was definitely like, yeah.
How important is that, right? When you look at the tasting menu, did you find yourself trying to incorporate ingredients from the tasting menu into kind of the finale that you're creating for a lot of these folks?
Um, I definitely tried to use maybe some herbs that they would use for the tasting menu as like a savory touch, so it's not overly sweet. Like in the palate cleanser, I would use some shiso in granita with plum wine, and do like gradually sweeten it up. And even my desserts, I don't think they were overly sweet. I used a lot of like vegetables and fruits as the main sweetening component. So I didn't want people to have like this extreme sugar high after the end of the meal. Like I would just finish off the last little bite with like a chocolate truffle, um, with like sancho peppers and pecans. So I think like it was like a gradual
Yeah.
sweet ride. Yeah.
Hmm. And you were managing kind of the entire kind of dessert, right? You were the head of
Hmm.
dessert, but you were basically running a one man show in essence, or one woman show,
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
sense. So there must have been a few horror stories that have happened. If you're comfortable with sharing, I'd be interested in hearing them and kind of how you
uh,
pivoted and saved them through.
I mean, I remember like in the beginning, I was very excited. So I was just like very excited to just create things. But then going through the seasons, and it was just hard doing production and keeping up with like, the dietary demands too that, customers have in a fine dining restaurant.
Hmm.
um so I think it's just like time management wise, I remember having a lot of anxiety, that the world was going to end and if I wasn't able to, make these things as perfect and pretty. I just remember having a lot of anxiety attacks, but then again, it was like working at Naka was a perfect healing setting for me because I was already really torn from losing my own business and
Hmm.
feeling a lot of like, just dilemma within me if I wasn't good enough, or if I was right for this position. What story did I have to tell? Why am I doing this? So I had a lot of thoughts like that, but then making the food and talking with my coworkers and being encouraged to keep trying, keep trying, keep trying was a really good practice for me to overcome those fears. And now I feel like, all right, even if I have a hard day, I know the world won't end,
Yeah.
and and I did my best. So I think I enjoy the process a lot more now without putting too much pressure onto myself.
I'll tell you that one thing. What you just said is actually quite beautiful because we everybody goes through different levels of anxiety,
Hmm.
and the one thing that we always think to ourselves is saying, why is this happening to me? Why am I
Hmm.
acting like this? This
Hmm.
is terrible. And what we realize is we're always comparing ourselves to other people, and in reality, they're all going through the same thing, right? Um,
Yeah.
the amazing thing that you did is you started your own business, so you almost accelerated that type of anxiety faster, right? That's the idea, and we're talking business person to business person at this
Oh
point.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think that's what's really cool is the fact that you can admit it. It's like, hey, like that stuff was hard. Like it
It
took
was
time.
really, yeah.
I woke up some mornings freaking out. Like
Oh my God.
this is so normal. And what's really
Mm-hmm.
interesting is how you said you kind of used another opportunity as a healing process. Like that
Mm-hmm.
is a very strong statement, which I give a lot of respect to, because it takes a lot of time to mentally get yourself out of that kind of hole, right? So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that. Like, what were some items that you had to do to change your mindset, or what was some
Mm-hmm.
I like things that you started doing to kind of really get a different perspective? Because I think mental health is probably the most important thing before work, before
Yeah.
a lot of things in life.
I think for everyone, like being able to take care of yourself is such an important priority that we should have. But I grew up, even though I knew like taking care of yourself is important, I think I gave a lot more of my attention and energy to pleasing other people, and also thinking if I was just good enough, like for the task, for as a daughter, as a friend, etc., etc. So um, I think as much as I had confidence in myself of like I think I'm good enough to make things and make people happy, I also second guess myself a lot. And a lot of my mental health issues came from my childhood experiences too. Like growing up in the States with different cultures, I would just always question who I was. Why am I here? But I think being at naka at one restaurant by myself, like I had to manage the station by myself, and if I didn't show up, like people didn't have that sweet finish.
Hmm.
I think that was a place that I had to show up, and promising myself that I will show up every day and deliver that promise. Even if I, didn't get to do the exceptional job that I, want to do, that I see my friends doing, I had to make sure that I keep up the promise that I show up for myself, I show up for my team. Um, and then after that, I think I really amplified on my therapy. I
Hmm.
needed an outlet other than just writing in my notes or my phone. I needed some guidance. So I went to a therapist a lot. I went to like acupuncture. I started meditating more. And in that process, I got to face with my thoughts and really change my perspective on life of, like you said, like life is not happening to me, but it's happening for me,
Hmm.
and just changing that perspective of how privileged I am to have this opportunity to heal and not go crazy and destroy myself
Yeah.
with self-destructive behavior, really. Like I think a lot of people in our position of creating something new go through this process. So yeah, just finding people to talk to. I would go to the farmers market and go to the farmers and just talk to them like, oh my god, you're so lovely, your energy is so amazing, and I have
I
no
love
idea what I'm doing.
it. No, but I think that's really good. It's
Yeah.
admitting that you need to talk to somebody is important. And
Mhm.
kind of a few things. Like we've been talking to a lot of operators, a lot of chefs in the industry on this podcast, and I'll tell
Mhm.
you the one kind of common theme is it's like imposter syndrome. It's the
Mhm.
highs and lows.
Yeah.
It's the kind of the culture that's created with back of the house in the sense of you got to get this done, you got to move this faster, you could be better, and that's kind of constantly driven into the thought like and mindset. And what's really interesting is I almost see a little bit of a change and shift in culture that's moving towards, yes, we're creating an amazing experience when it comes to dining, but
Mhm.
there is a little more of a spotlight in the sense of who's making the food, right? This
Mhm.
empathy, this humanization of what we're doing. So, I think what's really amazing about what you said is that I think a lot of people, if they heard that, different colleagues in the industry, I think it would be really good for them to hear, right? It's just like, hey, like
Mhm.
what you're going through is you're not alone, number one. Number two,
Mhm.
everyone's going through it. We're not saying it's the right thought process or mindset to
Mhm.
do that, but you should talk to people, you should meditate, you should take care of your health,
Mhm.
understand what's going in your body so that you can
Mhm.
kind of have this like clearer mindset. So that's
Yeah.
awesome, Gemma.
Thank you. No, I really like once I opened up, I would open up to like my therapist and like my coworkers eventually when I started to feel a little better with like meditation and stuff. Um, I could see patterns in my colleagues, like how they posted on Instagram or how we interacted, and I just noticed like I'm not alone as much as
Hmm.
I felt like I was in my own bubble. And now I'm at a good place, but I'm not stopping the meditation practices or taking time for myself and setting healthy boundaries.
Hmm.
So it's just practicing, and I think we just need to be kinder to ourselves and believe in ourselves a little bit more, because happier people make better food, happy food, and we
Hmm.
can really create the change that we really want to see in the world if we take care of our mental health.
I love that. Happy people make happy food, and I think
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna quote you on that one, Gemma. That's a good one. But but let's kind of move the conversation
Hmm.
to where you are today, right?
Yeah.
So you're doing amazing pop ups. Tell us a little bit more about that. How'd you get into it? What are you currently working on? And what excites you about that?
Yeah, so COVID really shook up our industry, as did the world. So right now, I'm currently not a pastry chef at a restaurant. I was last year at this really cute Japanese izakaya, Tsubaki and Ototo, and we were doing a to-go concept, and eventually opened up for dining again. But during COVID, I realized like I think I after even getting COVID in January, I really realized like, oh, I need to set even healthier boundaries with myself to protect myself and like protect other people, and also like just working in a restaurant as a pastry chef, I think really opened up wounds in our industry that like the demands for a pastry program, I think it's pretty high. Like the profit margin compared to savory food and alcohol is so different. Like if
Hmm.
you sell wine and sake and cocktails, you make so much more business for the restaurant. But a pastry program costs more than you make a lot of money. But it's there because people love desserts,
Hmm.
and it's an element that when you have it, it's really special. But I realized it wasn't sustainable for the raising housing prices in LA and the cost of living. So I think being a freelance chef right now, I'm able to sustain myself a little bit more healthier, where I don't have to worry too much about paying rent, and then I'm able to collaborate with projects that I believe in a more faster setting. Like I was able to do a fundraiser last week, kind of planned it in within 3 days or
Oh
something.
wow.
Like so, um, and like even the pop-up that I'm doing this week and helping out another friend with her kitchen prep, which doesn't relate to anything with the pop-ups that I'm doing or pastry related. But I think just being able to be more flexible with who I work with and the projects that I work with is something that I'm being called to do now, where I feel
Hmm.
good doing it.
Yeah, and I think the most important. And we're also kind of seeing that on our end is like this more tuned to flexibility. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you create amazing experiences in front of people, right? And interact with people and talk to people. Like, that is very, like, kind of what you said before. That's a very important piece of, human interaction and, growth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's really cool about what you're doing is like these pop-ups around LA, and you're hosting fundraisers, right? You were kind of raising for
Mm-hmm.
Chinatown over the weekend. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, I did Ukraine and Chinatown.
Yeah.
So there's like some businesses in Chinatown that got really hit with, just the troubles that we are going through. So there's a fundraising platform called Bakers Against Racism, and
Hmm.
just kind of looping that in with the community, and then raising funds for Ukraine, and I'm sure I'm gonna do other. I'm already thinking like, okay, what, like everyone needs a hand,
Yeah.
so if I can do something, like what's the next thing that I can do some good. And I
Yeah.
think,
And so
yeah.
so what is the future for you? Where do you think you're gonna be? Or you're like, hey, I'm not looking that far ahead, Nabil.
Well, this year is kind of exciting, between my husband and I. Although, like, the world is still so unpredictable, and we just count our blessings every day for like the opportunity of being able to choose what
Hmm.
tomorrow might look like. My husband and I were planning to travel and visit our family in Japan and my grandpa in Italy. So that's why this flexibility is also really important to me right now, is like, if I do decide to travel in the next 2 months, I can. And yeah, my husband hasn't seen his family in over like 11, I mean, he hasn't been back to Japan in like over 11 years or
Oh,
something.
wow.
So it's time, and I have to see my sister, and I have to see my grandpa. And now that the COVID restrictions are a little bit more lenient, I think it's time for us to backpack a little bit,
Hmm.
Japan, and be inspired again, learn new cooking techniques, and visit our chef friends over there. And so, in that sense, I'm very excited. I haven't been this excited since, I guess, pandemic time.
Yeah. No, I like
um,
that. No,
yeah.
that's amazing. And food is a very creative medium, right? It's a way for
Mhm.
people to kind of come together and experience different kind of emotions and feelings once they consume it. And I definitely think having that creative mental space is really important. So that backpacking trip, that seeing
Mhm.
different cultures or
Mhm.
refreshing yourself with different cultures is extremely important. So kudos to you, Gemma. I think amazing story, amazing experiences. Just being open about mental health and how important it is, just from a general sense. It doesn't even have to deal with the food industry. It's just life in
Mhm.
general. Is
Mhm.
the brighter you are, happy. Happy people make happy like meals, right?
Mhm.
That's really important because you know I think everybody should be a little more positive in the world because there's so much bad happening, right? And it can
Mhm.
really bring you down. So
Yeah.
thank you, Gemma. I think for closing off, let's let the audience know how they can message you, kind of see your stuff. Where can they find your pop-ups? I think if you can close us off with your some of your information, that'd be great.
Right on. You can find me on Instagram at Gemnator or Kimochi LA for any mochi pop ups that I'm doing. And you can sign up for my email newsletter that I haven't started yet, but if I have any updates, at gemmamatsuyama.com. So those
Perfect.
are two places.
Cool. Well, thank you, Gemma. I know you got a bunch of work to do, and you're going to different pop-ups and just being a bright light in LA. So thank you so much, and we hope to talk soon.
Yeah, I hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
Bye.